Today's cafe conversation is led by Dr. Julie Paxton, professor of economics, and the title is The Economics of Kindness. And so today she's going to walk us through some funny and surprising insights about kindness from the economics literature. And drawing from her Economics of Altruism class, she'll share results from experiments that test for generosity and kindness performed right here in Athens by Ohio University students. So please welcome Dr. Paxton.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful day here. And I'm sure you're wondering what an economist is talking about kindness. Like, that doesn't seem to fit. Is it some type of a strange mistake? Maybe I should be talking about the economics of greed, right? But they're actually pretty much corollaries, kindness and greed, right? It's understanding what makes people kind could also help us understand what makes people greedy. So I do teach a class on altruism, as was mentioned, and in this class, the students do a number of different experiments on campus, and so I'm going to share some of those results with you today. I wanted to just start out in this particular setting. I thought it might be kind of fun for you guys to take a moment to think about some kindness that you have experienced. Has somebody been kind to you? What have they done? So just try to think of that, and I'll share one that's happened to me. I have this photo up from Ohio State. I graduated from Ohio State, so every now and then we'll go up for a game, or in this particular case, we took the kids to a basketball game, and I'm thinking of having some technical difficulties here. Do you want me to take this off? All right. Yeah. Okay. Hello? Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me? Doesn't sound, okay. All right, did you guys find out some interesting stories of kindness from one another? I'll share with you one that happened to me. We were at an Ohio State basketball game, and we were sitting in the nosebleed section, way up high, and I was with my son, who was about 6 or 7 at the time, and every time they shot the t-shirt cannon, he was jumping up and down trying to get the t-shirt, right? Trying to get the t-shirt. And yet we were so far up that there was no way he was going to get a t-shirt. Like, it was impossible. The range was not that far. So, but every single time he would jump up and down. And by the end of the game, the last time they shot the cannons, a youth small Ohio State t-shirt fell right on top of him. And somebody behind us, evidently, had seen him trying so hard that they had gone out, bought a youth small, and had thrown it at him, and he was so excited. And when I turned around to look, I never did find out who that was. You know, they did it anonymously, and there's something about that story that, like, it still makes me smile to think about it, because it was so unexpected. And I don't know, for the ones that you were discussing with one another, like, you know, what makes something stand out in your mind? Like, was there something extraordinary about that story that you shared Does anybody want to share something that they heard that was unusual? Was it your inner circle that did the kindness? Was it a stranger? You know? Yeah.
We're here from Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and we're visiting Ohio University, and we graduated here in 1973 and 1974. So we've been back for a long time.
Yeah, welcome back.
The university has been really good for us. Everyone that we talked to, Vicki over at the alumni area, Austin was over at the basketball conventions area. Everybody that we've talked to and everything else has gone out of their way to make us comfortable, tell us all the information we need. So Ohio University hasn't changed in many, many, many years. Great people in this game.
That's great to hear. Well, one of the things that my students do right at the beginning of our class is we talk about spaces that might elicit more kindness than others. There's an institute at Berkeley that looks at altruism and kindness, and they have something called the Jhen Ratio. Jhen is actually from Confucius. It's a mixture of kindness, humanity, and respect that transpires between people. And my students, to calculate this Jhen Ratio, they have to go out onto campus or into Athens, and they look at kind of in the numerator, they look at all the good things that they're witnessing. So they might be sitting right here and they're writing down every time somebody did something nice. And then in the denominator, they put all the negative things, the complaints, the shoves or the selfishness. And so they do a ratio like that. So my question to you is, where do you think the highest Jhen ratio within walking distance of campus is? I asked my son this and he got it first thing. Yeah. Donkey coffee. Yes. So donkey coffee has a high Jhen ratio. But what about the lowest in Athens? Where's the lowest?
Probably some corporate fast food.
Okay, fast food. Yeah.
Some of the bars.
The bars? Mm-mm. Well, the lowest one that we've measured was the registrar's office. Sorry for the people working at the registrar's office. It wasn't the people working there, it was the students in the line, right, waiting, because they're frustrated, something's not going right, and so being in that line is a negative experience. So it's not surprising that people come to coffee houses to experience a good Jhen ratio, right? It's a happy place. And it's also very interesting to see, like, within your own lives, like in your own apartment or in your dorm or in your house, what is the Jhen ratio? And do you want to get out of the house and go to Donkey Coffee? So that's also really insightful. All right, so economics. What does this have to do with economics? And the definition, microeconomics, it's the study of decision making. We are looking at what makes people decide to how to allocate their money, how to allocate their time, and we look at the incentives that force them into these decisions, and then how does that impact our society and our world markets. So altruism and kindness fit squarely in the domain of microeconomics because it is ultimately decision making. And kindness itself can be a rational process. You think, oh, well, economics is the study of selfishness. But maybe even being kind is selfish. There are a lot of benefits to being kind, right? So some of the things that we could call rational kindness, like it's rational even within your own self-interest to be kind. Psychologists talk about the warm glow or like the warm fuzzies. You get warm fuzzies, right? You feel good when you're kind. You also increases your self-esteem. You get respect from other people. And then interestingly, there are scientific studies showing that kind people live longer, they're healthier, they're happier. And so those are pretty good incentives, self-interested incentives to be kind. We also experience reciprocity. when you're kind to someone, it usually comes right back at you, right? So if you're nice to your roommates, you wash the dishes tonight, they'll probably wash the dishes next time, hopefully, right? And then also we care about people in our lives. So in economics, when we talk about our own welfare, the terms that we use in economics are, we talk about your utility function, like all the things that make you happy are in your utility function. But we can also care about other people. So the happiness of my children is in my utility function. So their utility functions are embedded in my utility function. In fact, parenting, for any of you who are parents, know that their happiness is almost one-to-one with ours. And sometimes I think I even feel it stronger than they, when they suffer or when they're happy. So we do care. So it's rational for me to act in a generous way with people that are within my own utility function. There's some interesting lessons from evolutionary biology for us in all of this. There's the notion of inclusive fitness, where in the animal world, you might act generously not only to save your own offspring, but to also save others who might be genetically related to you, but not offspring. So for example, here's a sentry gazelle. Its job is to jump up and down when it sees a lion to protect the whole herd. And by doing that, it actually puts itself in danger. So it's risking its own life to save not only its own offspring, but others that are somewhat genetically related. And there's a rule, Hamilton's rule, that looks at this relationship. So we're more likely to act generous to people that are more genetically related to us. And then it kind of wanes out from there. Like they say, I'd risk my life to save 2 of my brothers or 8 of my cousins, right? But what about among humans? Is that true? This is a picture of this woman in Canada who was hiking with her daughter, Maya, and she was 3 years old, and all of a sudden a cougar comes out and grabs Maya. And what does the mom do? She wedges herself between the rock and the cougar and fights the child out of the cougar's mouth. I mean, that's what moms do, right? So she's willing to risk her life for that. Now, would she do that for a total stranger? Maybe not, right? So there is maybe this same relationship. We're kind to our inner circle. That inner circle might be genetically related to us, or it might not be. We can include other people that are not genetically related to us in our inner circle, and we're still kind to them. Now, behavioral economics is a field within economics that has just grown exponentially over the past couple of decades. So there have been several Nobel prizes awarded to behavioral economists, and they're borrowing a lot from psychology in order for us to understand how people make decisions. Because ultimately, we don't have it pegged completely. We kind of thought before behavioral economics that people thought like Dr. Spock, that they act like econs. That's what we call them, econs. So Dr. Spock, right, he's logical, he uses reflective reasoning, and he uses cost-benefit analysis. He's slow, deductive thinker that takes in all of the information, and based on all of that, he makes the right choice. Very rational, right? But yet, what we're learning from psychologists is that actually we're more human than the econs. Humans, in contrast, are indecisive and inconsistent, and we have automatic responses that are kind of almost unconscious and sometimes wrong. We use quick rules of thumbs called heuristics to make these quick decisions. Like, you can't possibly take the time to, if you're going to donate to a nonprofit, you can't have the time to think, what is the absolute best value for this $1 that I'm going to spend? Is this nonprofit the very best maximizing, of my money, right? It doesn't make sense to do that. So we use quick stereotypes and heuristics to make quick judgments. So I'm going to share a few of the insights that we've gotten from the behavioral economics literature, but we're going to start with a game that behavioral economists use. And in this game, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to find a partner. And that's okay. If you don't know the person, that's okay. Introduce. It's a lecture on kindness, so you can meet somebody and introduce yourselves. Once you have a partner, raise your hand, and we're going to give you a package of M&Ms. Don't open them. Do not open the package of M&Ms. All right. Just one package per pair, all right, is what we're going to do. Here, I could take some. All right. Thanks. All right. There's the one. All right. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay, so the name of this game is Ultimatum. And once you have your pair and your package of M&Ms, I want one of you to say, I'm player number 1, and the other person can be player number 2. All right, so decide which one is player 1. All right, does everybody have M&Ms? All right. If you don't have some, you can come up here. There's some up here. All right, so player number 1, I want you to take the package of M&Ms. Don't open them. They're yours to keep. I'm giving you this package of M&Ms. They're all yours if you are successful in the game, all right? Now, if you're not successful in the game, I will take the M&Ms back, all right? You do not get to keep the M&Ms. Inside these bags of M&M, after very careful research that my son and I have been doing this afternoon, we've learned that there are 14 M&Ms in each package, okay? Sometimes there's more. If there's more, then that's your extra bonus, all right? But there's at least 14 M&Ms in that package. So player number 1, here's the game. You are going to make an offer anywhere from 1 to 14, or actually from 0 to 14. You can make an offer of how many M&Ms you would like to give to that other person, all right? You can give them 0, or you could give them the whole package, 14, or any amount in there, okay? And player number 2, you have the following role. Your whole role in this game is to say, I accept, which means you'll open up the package and you'll get those M&Ms, or I reject. And if you reject, you need to bring the package right back up here and neither of you get any, okay? All right, and there's also going to be no discussion here amongst you, all right? So there's no negotiating here. It's either accept or reject. So player 1, you just need to make the offer, and player 2, you're going to say, I accept or I reject. All right, are you guys ready? Okay, player 1, make your offer. All right. Okay, and then player 2, you just accept or reject. All right. Did anybody reject their offer? Okay, I'll take that. Anybody else reject the offer? Anyone else? All right. Now, for those of you who accepted, how many of you got an offer of 7? Okay, so there were a lot of even splits. Who got lower than 7 and they accepted? How many did you accept? You accepted 5. How many?
6.
You accepted 6. All right, so if you accepted, you can open those up and you can share the M&Ms, all right? But for those of you who said no, how many did you reject?
Me?
Did you reject or who rejected?
I
Okay,
rejected.
how many did you reject?
I rejected all 14.
Oh, rejecting, is it a preference that you don't care for chocolate? Is that?
I mean, I like chocolate.
Why did you reject? Yeah. She was trying to be kind to you, right?
It would have been nice if it was like half and half. But...
So you have a preference for equality. You would have accepted 7?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So and we do see that there are we have an inequality aversion in general. What did you reject?
I also rejected 14.
Okay. And what was your?
She's too nice.
She's too nice. She needs to learn. So what we can learn from this is oftentimes, like if I would, suppose that I were partnered with you, and I will do this in my classes, right? If I'm partnered with you, if I would have offered you 1, okay? You were partnered with me, I offer you 1. Would some of you guys reject that? I'm going to keep 13 for myself and I offer you 1, right? So some of you, how many people would reject that? And how many people would take it? So the people who would take it, you guys are econs. And the people who would reject it, you guys are humans, right? Okay. According to economic theory, we think that you should accept 1 M&M, and you should offer 1 M&M if you're rational, and that your rational partner would accept 1 M&M, because why would you rather have 0 or 1? And this is assuming that you like M&Ms, right? There has to be that assumption. Normally, this is played with money. The typical amount is they use like a $10 roll of quarters, and so then you can offer any amount. And sometimes behavioral economists have tried this with even $100. They did it in Indonesia, where $100 would be a lot. And do you think that Indonesians, if they were offered $30, which at the time would have been like the equivalent of 3 weeks of salary, if they're offered 30 and the other person gets 70, do you think that makes them mad enough that they'll reject it? They do. They do reject it. They're mad. We have an inequality aversion, right? That we like to have it equal. It typically, and we have 2 outliers in this case, the fact that you guys rejected larger offers. Typically, people will accept large offers. They're okay with inequality as long as you're on top, right? That inequality is fine. In general, with money, 71% of people that play this game will offer between 40 and 50%, and that's pretty much what you guys did, right? You offered about half. We were ranging from 5 to 7. That's very typical of what we find when we play these games. That we can add on behavioral economic elements on top of this. So this is something that we did here at OU. How many people have had Professor Palmer teaching them economics? Has anybody had? He's taught thousands of people over the years. None of you guys had Professor Palmer? I'm shocked. Anyways, we went into his economics class. And do you think this would make a difference? What if, when we played that game, I made you put your hand on the other person's shoulder when you made the offer? And then, so you actually have to touch while you're playing this game. Do you think that that would influence the outcome of this compared to not touching? Would it just creep you out? What happens is, yes, it does. Touching increases the fair offers, and it increases the acceptance rates. It's hard to reject somebody when they're touching you, right? So human touch tends to be important. We even see that like in the NBA, they did a study of looking at the teams that touch the most. They give the high fives and, pat each other and whatnot. Those are the winningest teams. So touch ends up being this surprising determinant of kind of success. And there's another thing that using this same experiment that I wanted to talk about, what if I primed you first? Now, priming just means that I'm going to introduce some type of a context or stimulus before the experiment. So what if I gave you all a word scramble? Half of you guys would be circling religious words. Okay, so here we have a bunch of religious words: faith, pastors, healing. And then others would just have neutral words like building or desk or something like that. So you've played that. You're going to unscramble the words first, and then we're going to play Ultimatum. Would that make a difference? It does. So we see higher for the people who had the religious priming. They had higher offers and more acceptances. What about atheists playing this? Did the word scramble affect atheists? Yes, it did. It doesn't matter. It still influenced you, no matter what your belief system is. Just unscrambling religious words makes you more generous.
Question.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but is that true cross-culturally?
I don't know cross-culture. I haven't seen a study that looks she said, is it a cross-culturally, would that hold? And I haven't seen one that looked at that. It would be a really interesting question. Yeah. What about playing that game? What if we could, do you think it would matter that we were being watched? Like right now when we played it, you were being watched. Like we were all in this room together, so you kind of don't want to be a jerk, right? Like we didn't see anybody make the one M&M offer. But what if it was completely anonymous? Would that make a difference? If you were just paired with somebody that you would never see and you had to decide how many to give them. So we do those experiments where you don't know who you're paired with. Oh yeah, people are a lot more selfish when they're not being watched and it's anonymous. There's an interesting study by a behavioral economist putting out they called it an honesty box. So in the coffee room, where if you guys work, in an office, there's always the pot of coffee, and they put a box there saying, "Hey, make a contribution to pay for the coffee and the cookies or whatever." And so one week they'd put a picture of flowers saying, "Please donate," and then on the off weeks they'd put a picture of creepy eyes looking at you saying, "Please donate." Same exact thing. Do you think there would be a difference between just having flowers versus a pair of eyes? The eyes got 3 times more donations. So my students in my class, they wanted to test this on campus. They decided they'd test it in the laundry room in the dorms. And they put up a sign saying, "Please clean out the lint after you finish drying." And so and then the treatment had the creepy eyes saying, "Please clean out the lint." And guess what? The students cleaned out the lint with the creepy eyes. So some of it, like with behavioral economics, it's weird results, but really interesting how sometimes really small things can nudge us into doing something nice. There's another concept in behavioral economics that we call the illusion of non-efficacy. And it's that feeling that nothing we can do will make a difference. Like, did you guys think about maybe contributing after like Hurricane Michael or but do you also feel like, what could I possibly do? Like, will my $10 make a difference? Or, so you have this feeling that it won't quite make a difference if the problem is so big. Like, how do we tackle it? So then in society, do we only fix little problems and we don't tackle big problems? So this is a study that was done by a psychologist. And in the control group, what he did is he showed a picture of a little girl, and he said, this little girl is named Rokia, and she's starving, and we would like you to donate to help her out. And in the treatment group, they showed Rokia and said the same exact thing. And they also mentioned that she is one of millions of people that are starving in this world. So do you think that the more information, recognizing that it's a bigger problem, do you think that made a difference? And which got more? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we end up finding is that people gave more to Rokia by herself without knowing that it was a bigger problem. And in fact, they gave half as much money once they were told that the problem was bigger. And we can see this in the nonprofit world, that the nonprofits are understanding this as an issue. So there are a lot of nonprofits where you get to choose like one person. You like adopt a child, or save the children, or adopt a dog from the humane. Like there's all of these different, like one. You're just going to help one person. Kiva is for micro lending. You get to choose which person, one person you're going to help, and they don't mention the bigger issue at all, right? So they're kind of on top of this. Okay, so I want to play another game with you, and this is also looking at a cognitive bias that we see that humans tend to have. And this game it's not really a game, but it's just demonstrating a cognitive bias. I'm going to spin this magic wheel, okay? And what I want to do is I want, like, everybody on this side of the room, I want you to close your eyes for a second, okay? You guys keep them closed for a second. And I'm going to show you your number, all right? I'm spinning it right now, and you're going to see your number. You got it? Okay. Now, everybody keep your eyes shut. I want you guys to shut your eyes, all right? And I want you guys to open your eyes now on this side. This is your number, all right? You got it? Okay, everybody have their number. You can all open your eyes. Okay, so you all have seen a number. And now what I want you to answer is the following question. Amongst all countries in the United Nations, right, all the member countries in the United Nations, is the percentage of members coming from African nations larger or smaller than the number you just saw, okay? So think about it. The percentage of African nations within the UN, is it larger or smaller than the number that you just saw, okay? Do you all have an answer? I mean, do you have a guess? We're just guessing, right? You got it? Okay, so I have another question for you. What is your best guess of the actual number, the actual percent of African nations in the UN? All right, so keep it in mind now. Do you all have a guess? Just like guess what it is. All right. Okay, so I'm going to share with you the results of what actually happens. In general, you guys saw the number 10, right? Or no, you saw 65. You saw 65, you guys saw 10. In general, you guys are going to guess a higher percentage than you guys. You saw 10, you saw 65. And I played this just with I'm teaching my Economics of Altruism is an honors tutorial seminar. And even with the honors students who have pretty good understanding of world geography, they matched these results exactly, okay? So here are the results. People that saw the number 10 guess 25. So if you guys were guessing close to 25, that would be typical. If you guys guessed 45, that would be typical, all right? But the correct answer is 27%. But the fact that you saw a random number that is completely unrelated to this question, it's interesting that it did anchor you to the actual final answer. And this is Daniel Kahneman. This is the Nobel Prize in Economics. This is one of the questions that he asked. So this is called anchoring. People are overly reliant on the first piece of information they hear, even if it's completely unrelated. And how many of you guys, have seen these contribution cards, like you're going to be donating and they give you like a card, check one of these. Like, do you want to give $500 a month? Do you want to give $100 a month or $50 a month? And you're like, wow, that's a lot of money, right? It anchors you to a much higher point than you were probably going to give to begin with, right? And that ends up being important with altruism and giving. I wanted to talk a little bit about dating since we're on a college campus. And how do you signal that you're like a kind person? When we ask college students in the dating pool, like what's the number one characteristic that you would really like in your mate? The number one thing for both men and women is kindness. That usually comes up on top, and that's pretty smart. If that's on top of your list, that's a good thing to have on top of your list. Now, I think number two for men is looks, what they're looking for, and then number two for women is financial security. Okay, now there's a whole bunch of different polls. You'll find different results depending on the study, but anyways, how do you signal if being kind is something desirable? How do you signal it? Like, how do you show somebody that you're kind? Okay, so good manners could be something. Doing, yes, helping out. What about, like, is there something you could wear that shows people that you're nice? Like, maybe you're got the T-shirt from the charity run that you just participated in, or you're wearing the Tom's shoes, or something. Like you could maybe signal that in some way. They did an experiment looking at how do men and women signal, like once they're in the dating pool, how do they spend their money in a way that signals that they are kind of a good catch, right? So they prime them with images of like dating and thinking like, what's your ideal date? And so in the treatment group, they're priming them for thinking about dating, and then in the control group, they're neutral. And then they ask about like what types of activities are you going to do, and how are you going to allocate your money? And we get a huge gender difference here, so I thought it's kind of interesting. Women who are trying to signal that they're in the dating market often try to be kind. They volunteer, they donate their time and money more than the control group, more than when they're not in the dating pool, okay? And they're thinking, oh, that's great. People are going to recognize that I'm kind. But unfortunately, the men have a completely different philosophy of how they are demonstrating that they're in the dating pool, and that is they tend to have more conspicuous spending, right? So they're like buying fancy clothes, or like showing that they're good providers and whatnot, but maybe they should be at the charity event, right, if they're really trying to. So there's kind of a disconnect there. So economists talk about signaling. I just wanted to put one slide here about corporate social responsibility, because it's really a growing trend. Businesses are becoming a lot more philanthropic. And we have expectations as consumers that businesses are going to be doing something good for our communities, right? That we're mad if they don't. So here's an example of the Tom's shoes. You buy one pair of these, and then you also donate one to somebody in need. And what's really amazing about like the incentives here for businesses is it's a win-win situation. So if any of you guys are, in business or wanting to have your own business one day, this makes a lot of sense. You get more loyal customers. You're able to charge higher prices. Like really, like think about the Tom's shoes. They're pretty expensive, right? And what's interesting is the consumers perceive your product at a higher quality level than it actually is. So people associate the fact that you are generous, with quality of the product. Employees of those businesses are really happy. They feel like their work is meaningful, and there's better retention in businesses with corporate social responsibility. Your business has a better reputation, and most interestingly for businesses, it actually increases your profits. Here's another experiment we did on campus with one of my classes. We looked at whether or not bundling a a coupon book with a charitable gift would increase donations. So my students went out, and we were working with Big Brothers Big Sisters in Athens, and they were curious whether or not it made sense to partner up with Elder Behrman. Are people even insulted, like, to give them a coupon book, like thinking that's not why I'm giving to Big Brothers Big Sisters, or do they want the coupon book, or would it make a difference, or is it just neutral? So the students did a randomized controlled trial where they had a control and a treatment group, and on some doors they'd knock and ask, do you want to donate to Big Brothers Big Sisters without the coupon, and then with others they offered the coupon book. Do you think that made a difference? Yeah, so here are the questions we asked. Do the coupons increase the charitable giving? And then the other question we asked is, where do the coupons matter the most in Athens? Now, in order to answer this question, you probably have to be familiar with Athens. So there's the East End and the West End, and then there's campus. And we could get a different answer for each one of these. Anybody from Athens that would venture a guess where this was the most, where the coupons made the most difference? East. Any other guesses? West? Any guesses for campus? So the students, well, as it turns out, in general on the east side, this is the control group versus the coupon book. In general, the total donations on the east side were the highest. And here's the west side in the middle, and then campus, the overall donations were lowest. But from the differences actually were statistically significant, the most with campus. It actually drove up. You see the difference here? That's a big difference. So the students on campus, it had a very big impact. On the West End, it was also statistically significant. And it was not statistically significant on the East End because overall they were giving either way, right? So how can we increase kindness in our community? If we kind of look at all of these things together, we can create incentives. Whether you're in government or at a nonprofit or at a student or just in your personal lives managing a homemaker, wherever you are, whatever decisions you get to make, you can create incentives. You can create a culture of kindness wherever you are. In government, you can see policies that incentivize kindness. So like tax breaks for charitable giving or funding social issues. Government has huge ability to create a kinder society. Business with the corporate social responsibility. Nonprofits and churches can provide opportunities for kindness and generosity. They can provide information. We can recognize the great work that people are doing. At Ohio University, there's a new initiative really under this president that we're looking at reaching out deeper into the community, creating strong community ties through community engagement and service learning and volunteerism. We allow employees and alumni to donate to different causes that we support. And then most importantly here at the university, we provide education. And when you think about the role of education, it helps for us to make decisions in acting generously to others if we're informed. So, for example, here's a picture from Hurricane Michael. And for every 700-word newspaper article that's published about a disaster, there's an 18% increase in donations. For every 60-second amount of TV coverage, you get a 13% increase in donations. When we know, we're able to make informed decisions. So being educated about social issues is important. We can also model kindness in our own lives. There's a huge contagion effect with kindness. You probably read about the pay it forward at Starbucks where, sometimes they'll have like 700 people go through and pay it forward. You pay the person behind you, and it can go on and on and on. But there are scientific studies showing that our brain activity, goes up, our heart rate goes up. When we just witness other people being kind, there's a moral elevation that occurs that makes you feel good and makes you more likely to act kind yourself.
So I have heard about this Starbucks pay it forward, and I actually had a really negative reaction because it was just helping people that could afford to go to Starbucks.
Yeah.
And that, I thought that would be more valuable corporate-wise if we paid it forward and that money went to give a cup of coffee to a homeless person.
Right.
That, to me, I don't
Yeah, it's true. If you're in a chain of 700 people and you just pay for the person behind you and it's the same amount that you would have paid for your own coffee, it's not really a net difference, right? Except for the person at the end who breaks the chain and gets the free coffee. They got something that they didn't, yeah. Oh, I don't know. That would be really interesting to see what happens to do people order up like somebody's paying for me? Yeah. And then the last thing I want to end with is just the importance of expanding your circle of care. I mentioned that we tend to be kind to the people within our own circle. When we look at the people in your own circle, it's actually surprising how small it is in a lot of our cases. Like, do you really know somebody in need, in significant need in your life? Many people that are making policies in the government and in our lives might not even know personally somebody that is in significant need. Are you putting yourself out there to expand your circle of care to allow you to understand the needs in our community? This is a current student of mine, Amal. She's in my class right now in my Economics of Poverty class, and the students are out working in the community. They're working at the library in Chansey, and they have a Cooks and Books program, and they're learning about the community that we live in Athens, Ohio. And by doing that, they're kind of expanding that circle of care. They're getting out of campus, they're learning about other people's lives, and by doing that, you are expanding your circle of care, and that puts other people into your own utility function, right? So with that, I will be happy to take questions, and I would invite any students here, if you're interested in this topic, to take my altruism class. Yeah, questions? So the question is, do you think we can teach kindness in a classroom? Yeah, in my class, in the altruism class, it's not necessarily that I'm pushing kindness or trying to make them change their behavior, but we're more studying it from an academic standpoint. Although each week they have to do experiments out on campus themselves to think about it. So they have to do random acts of kindness. They have to go out and test, they do experiments with their roommates or with strangers and whatnot. So they think about it. Ultimately, isn't that teaching kindness is probably the doctrine of every world religion? I mean, if you look at any of the different kind of moral laws of every world religion, there's kindness is at the heart of it. And when you think about it, like, what does that really mean? If in our world, we have selfish people and we have selfless people. And all of us are a mix of both, right? We all have a little bit of both. But if you lived in a world where you could be either selfish or selfless, I mean, who would dominate? The selfish people kind of dominate. And oftentimes we need rules in this world to help that from happening, So we're all on the same page that we want to live in a kind world. We don't really want to have selfish people dominate. And so there are kind of social pressures and punishments in a way for people who are selfish, that there can be stigmatization of, I remember a couple of years ago there was a cruise ship that went down in Italy, and the first person out was the captain, right? he bailed and let other people, go down with the ship, and he was stigmatized by that. It was morally repugnant that he would do that. And so there is a lot of social pressure for kindness. Teaching it, that's probably the job of parents too, right? It's one of the big things that all parents try to teach. In a classroom, I think that it depends what level it's at, but certainly at a university level, I think it's more the issues, these larger issues that we're talking about. Maybe if it was a religious school. Other questions? Yeah.
What's your view on social impact funding rather than charitable giving?
So social impact funding versus charitable giving. So there's been a trend towards really thinking about how do we give and what is that social impact? And I think that trend is a good trend as far as thinking critically about social impact. More and more in the literature we see people that are thinking deeply about what makes the most impact. So just giving money doesn't necessarily mean that you're changing things. You could keep giving over and over and over without changing the root causes of a particular social issue. And when people become a lot more savvy about social impact investing, I think that will make a deeper change in our society. We spend a lot of time teaching students about what stocks they should invest in, right? How to analyze a portfolio and what makes sense for maximizing your profits. But we spend almost no time thinking about how to analyze our charitable giving. And it's not all the same. And there's some big mistakes that people have as far as charitable giving goes. One of the main metrics we look at for a good charity is low overhead cost, right? Isn't that something that we associate with a good charity? And yet, what is overhead cost? It's staff, right? Are we saying somebody who is extremely capable and could easily make a huge impact in a nonprofit, are we to expect that they only get $20,000 a year? Why? If they could earn, if they have an opportunity cost of much, much higher. And what if they could transform that nonprofit into a dinky little just mom and pop thing, into a really impressive organization that makes a huge social impact? Why don't we value people for the work that they do and how they can transform our society? Yet that's a stigma that we have, that we think that if you're charitable, we shouldn't pay you. And another overhead cost is advertising. What if you could take advertising money and triple your operating budget just by advertising, trying to get more people to donate? Is that a good investment in having advertising costs? Absolutely, that's growing. And so why are we're making nonprofits and charitable organizations tiny because we have this expectation that their overhead is zero. We're only happy if they have all volunteers. Why? Don't we want a professional charitable giving? And then impact, trying to assess impact is extremely difficult. There are many different types of metrics, and that is not figured out. There's some organizations, here in Athens, one of the charities, Good Works, that works with homeless and poverty alleviation. Keith Wasserman said, my main metric that I want is for the people to feel love. how do you measure that, right? I mean, can you make a really deep impact in one person versus is it just numbers, like how many people did you feed a meal to? Or so it's pretty tricky, but I think social value investing is an impact is definitely something we need to consider. And I know you're an expert on that. Would you like to maybe make a comment about that?
So it's just something that is getting much more interest. As you say, how you measure it is really quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Great thing for students to be involved in.
Yeah. In my economics of altruism class, actually Warren Buffett funds my class. And we have, each time I teach the class, the Buffett's Learning by Giving Foundation gives my class $10,000. And they have to make the decision of how to allocate that money in Athens. So they partner with nonprofits. So this semester, for example, I'm teaching the class and they're partnered with Rural Action, the Athens Foundation, and HapCap. One of those is going to get $10,000, and they're going to be looking at like metrics of how do we assess this? What makes sense for effective philanthropy? It's a really important question to think about. Okay, well, yeah.
This giving, charity, I think, can certainly be impacted by outside factors, such as tax reform,
Yeah.
and that's impact on people who can't write it off for as much anymore as far as charitable giving. So I don't know how you,
Yeah, so his question was about like tax breaks. If our tax system is altered to lessen the incentives for charitable giving, how does that impact our society? And it actually does. Like I said, I put that government first because these are big incentives that can allow for a lot of good to be done. And I think we have some type of judgment sometimes of what we consider to be authentic giving versus maybe self-interested giving. And so we think, oh, if a corporation's just writing it off as a tax break, that's not authentic giving. But yet that money still does some amazing good, right? Like it really can make a difference for the nonprofits that they support. So absolutely, when we alter our tax code to lessen the incentive to give, then that is making the world a less kind place. All right, thank you very much. I guess that was the last one. Feel free to come up afterwards. Yep.